Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his warship, the Stellar Dawn. His 4 eyes watched the star charts floating in front of him. The blue lights showed everything normal in this part of space. Kepler Station sat quiet in the distance, a small metal dot against the black void. Zethkar had been patrolling this area for 12 years. He knew every asteroid, every gas cloud, every piece of space junk. The humans had built their mining station here 3 months ago. The Council did not like it, but the humans said they had the right to mine in their own space. Admiral called. His sensor officer, a young Altarian with green scales. I am getting strange readings. Zethkar walked over to the sensor station. The screen showed wavy lines that made no sense. What am I looking at? Space is bending near Kepler Station, sir. Like something very heavy is there, but our scanners show nothing. Zethkar frowned. In all his years of service, he had never seen readings like this. Run a full scan? Check all our equipment? The officer's hands moved fast over the controls. All systems working fine, Admiral, but the distortions are getting stronger. Other crew members started looking worried. The bridge became quiet except for the hum of computers. Zethkar felt something cold in his stomach. Something was very wrong here. Sir, the communications officer spun around in her chair. Kepler Station is sending emergency signals. They say unknown ships are approaching. What ships? Zethkar demanded. Our sensors show empty space. Before anyone could answer, the main screen exploded with light. 3 massive shapes appeared. From nowhere, like ghosts becoming real. Zethkar's mouth fell open. These were not like any ships he had ever seen. The human vessels looked alive. Their hulls curved and flowed like water frozen in time. No sharp edges, no straight lines. The metal seemed to shift and change as he watched. Light bent around them in strange ways, making them hard to look at directly. By the ancient stars, whispered his weapons officer. How big are those things? Zethkar did quick math in his head. Each human ship was at least 2 kilometers long. His own warship was only 800 meters. These vessels could swallow his entire fleet. Are they human ships? Asked the sensor officer. They must be, Zethkar said, but he did not sound sure. No other species builds ships like that. The 3 alien vessels moved without any visible engines. No fire came from their backs, no energy trails. They just glided through space like sea creatures swimming through water. Admiral, they are moving toward our defense platforms, reported. The tactical officer, Zethkar, looked at the display. The Council had built 6 defense platforms around Kepler Station. Each platform had enough firepower to destroy a battleship. The platforms were turning to face the unknown ships. Tell the platforms to power up weapons, Zethkar ordered. Send a message to the human ships. Tell them to identify themselves and state their purpose. The communications officer worked fast. Message sent, Admiral. No response from the human vessels. On the screen, the 3 ships spread out. They moved with perfect coordination, like dancers who had practiced the same routine 1,000 times. Zethkar had fought in many battles. He knew the look of ships preparing to attack. All vessels, battle stations, he commanded, raise shields, prepare weapons. Alarms rang through the ship. Crew members ran to their positions. The bridge lights changed from blue to red. Zethkar felt his heart beating fast. He had 16 ships in his patrol fleet. The humans only had 3, but something about those ships made him afraid. Admiral, called the sensor officer. The human ships are charging some kind of weapon system. But the energy readings don't make sense. What do you mean? The power levels are impossible, sir. Our computers say the readings are wrong. Zethkar watched the main screen. The human ships had stopped moving. They floated in space like sleeping giants. But he could feel their power. The air on his bridge felt heavy, like before a storm. Defense Platform Alpha is hailing us, said the communications officer. Put him through. A gruff voice filled the bridge. Admiral, this is Commander Vex at Platform Alpha. What are those things? My sensors are going crazy. Unknown human vessels, Zethkar replied. Prepare to fire if they show hostile intent. Sir, they are doing something to space itself. My science officer says the gravity in this area is changing. Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. Ships that could change gravity? That was impossible. No one had that kind of technology. Not even the ancient council races. The human ships began to glow. Not with normal engine fire, but with a deep purple light that seemed to come from inside. Their hulls, the light grew brighter and brighter. "Energy spike!" shouted the sensor officer. "All three ships are building up massive power." "Fire!" Zethkar commanded. "All ships, open fire now." His fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and fusion missiles streaked through space toward the human vessels. The weapons should have torn the strange ships apart. Instead, the attack simply bent around the human ships like water flowing around rocks. The energy beams curved away. The missiles changed direction and flew off into empty space. "Impossible," breathed the weapons officer. The human ships did not fire back. They did not need to. Instead, space around the first defense platform began to twist. Zethkar watched in horror as the massive metal structure folded in on itself, like paper being crumpled by an invisible hand. "Platform Alpha is gone," reported the tactical officer. His voice shook. The second platform tried to escape. Its engines fired at full power, but the space around it stretched and compressed. The platform's hull screamed as it was pulled apart by forces no living thing should control. "They are not using weapons," whispered the science officer. "They are using gravity itself as a weapon." One by one, the defense platforms died. Not destroyed by explosions or fire, but crushed by the fabric of space-time itself. The human ships moved among them like predators among prey, silent, efficient, unstoppable. Zethkar's fleet tried to help. They fired again and again. But their weapons could not touch the human vessels. It was like trying to fight the wind or the tide. "Admiral, incoming message from the lead human ship," called the communications officer. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was calm and human. It spoke in perfect council standard. "Council vessels, you are not our target. Withdraw to a safe distance." "This is Admiral Zethkar of the Council Fleet," he replied. "You are attacking Council property. Surrender immediately." "Admiral, you have 60 seconds to move your ships away from Kepler Station. We do not wish to harm your crews." The human voice was polite but firm, like a teacher speaking to a child. Zethkar felt anger rise in his chest. How dare these humans talk to him that way? "We will not retreat," he said. "This is Council space." "No, Admiral, this is human space. You have 50 seconds. Zethkar looked around his bridge. His crew stared back at him with fear in their eyes. Outside, the last defense platform crumpled like a tin can. The human ships had not taken a single hit. "Sir," whispered his first officer, "maybe we should consider." 30 seconds, came the human voice. Zethkar thought of his crew. 300 beings on his ship alone. Thousands more in his fleet, all looking to him for orders. He thought of his children back on Altair Prime. He thought of the families of every crew member under his command. "All ships," he said quietly, "fall back to minimum safe distance." His fleet moved away from Kepler Station. Zethkar felt shame burn in his chest. In 30 years of service, he had never retreated from battle, but this was not a battle. This was something else entirely. The human ships did not pursue. They simply floated near the station like guardian spirits. Their purple glow faded, but their presence remained heavy and threatening. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "Kepler Station is hailing us." "Put them through," a human voice came over the speakers. Different from the ship's voice, younger. "Council Fleet, this is Station Commander Martinez. We are secure. Thank you for your concern, but we are under the protection of the Human Defense Force now." Zethkar stared at the screen. The human ships began to fade, becoming transparent like ghosts. Within moments they were gone, vanished back into whatever impossible place they had come from. "Admiral," called the sensor officer, "I am detecting a transmission, very low power. It is being sent to all council frequencies. What does it say? The officer read from his screen. Kepler Station is now under human protection. Any attempts to reclaim it will be met with decisive action. Zethkar slumped in his command chair. His fleet floated helplessly in space. 6 defense platforms destroyed in 10 minutes. Not a single human casualty, no human ship even scratched. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his first officer. Zethkar looked at the empty space where the human ships had been. Somewhere out there, invisible to all his sensors, those vessels were waiting, watching, ready to strike again if needed. "Send a message to Council Command," he said slowly. "Tell them we have a problem. A very big problem." As his ship turned away from Kepler Station, Zethkar wondered what other surprises the humans might have waiting in the dark. He had spent his whole life believing the Council was the strongest force in the galaxy. Today he learned he was wrong. The humans had brought something new to the galaxy, something that made the Council's mighty fleets look like toys. As the stellar dawn jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's impossible victory, Zethkar could only wonder what would happen next. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and no one was ready for what was coming. Counselor Vexani walked through the great halls of Nexus Prime. Her blue skin felt cold despite the warm air. 3 days had passed since the Kepler Station incident. 3 days since everything changed. The emergency session would start in 1 hour. Representatives from 47 species were gathering in the council chamber. Vexani had never seen so many leaders arrive so quickly. Usually it took weeks to organize such a meeting. She stopped at a large window that looked out over the capital city. Ships from across the galaxy filled the sky. Draconian war cruisers with their black hulls and red markings. Elegant Centauri vessels that looked like floating crystals. Even the mysterious Voidwalkers had sent a representative. Everyone was scared. Vexani could feel it in the air. "Terrible business, this human situation," said a voice behind her. Vexani turned to see Ambassador Krell from the Draconian Empire. His reptilian features were set in a permanent scowl. His yellow eyes glowed with anger. "Indeed," Vexani replied carefully. "Most unexpected? Unexpected?" Krell's voice rose. "This is an act of war. The humans destroyed council property. They must be punished." Vexani knew better than to argue with Krell directly. The Draconians always wanted to solve problems with violence, but she had read the reports from Admiral Zethkar. This was not a situation where force would work. "Perhaps we should hear what our military experts have to say first," she suggested. Krell made a growling sound. "Military experts? Your Admiral Zethkar ran away like a scared child. 16 ships against 3 humans, and he retreated. He saved the lives of his crews," Vexani said firmly. "That shows wisdom, not cowardice." More representatives walked past them in the hallway. Vexani recognized most of them. The tall, thin ethereals with their pale skin and large black eyes. The stocky rockburn who looked like living mountains. The aquatic deep swimmers in their water-filled mobility suits, all of them looked worried. All of them had read the same reports she had. "Counselor Vexani," called a familiar voice. She turned to see her aide, a young Centauri named Rixel, hurrying toward her. His usually calm demeanor was gone. His hands shook as he carried a datapad. "What is it?" she asked. "More reports. Counselor, from the outer sectors." Vexani took the datapad and read quickly. Her heart sank with each line. 7 more incidents, Rixel whispered. All within the past 48 hours, all following the same pattern. Vexani looked at the list. 7 different star systems. 7 council installations attacked by invisible human ships. 7 demonstrations of impossible technology. Any casualties? She asked quietly. None, Counselor. In every case, the humans disabled our defenses without killing anyone. Then they vanished. Ambassador Krell had been listening. He grabbed the datapad from Vexani's hands and read it himself. His face grew darker with each entry. "This proves it," he snarled. "This is a coordinated attack? The humans are testing our defenses? Preparing for a larger assault? Or sending a message?" Vexani said thoughtfully. What kind of message? That they can strike anywhere, anytime. And we cannot stop them. The three of them stood in uncomfortable silence. Around them, other diplomats hurried past, all heading toward the council chamber. The emergency session would begin soon. We need to find out how they are doing this, Rixel said. Our scientists have no explanation for their technology. Technology that makes ships invisible, Krell muttered. Technology that bends space itself, it is impossible. Vexani had been thinking about this for 3 days. She had read every report, studied every piece of data. The humans had somehow made a massive leap in technological development. But how? Come, she said. We should take our seats. The council chamber was the largest room on Nexus Prime. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, held up by pillars that seemed to reach into infinity. Representatives sat in a great circle, each species in their designated area. Vexani found her place among the Centauri delegation. Around the circle, she could see the worried faces of beings from across the galaxy. Everyone was talking quietly among themselves. The great gong sounded, calling the session to order. High Counselor Moran, an ancient being whose species had helped found the council 1,000 years ago, stood at the center of the chamber. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Moran's voice echoed through the chamber. We face an unprecedented situation. 3 days ago, human forces attacked council installations using technology unknown to our science. A holographic display appeared above Moran's head. It showed the battle at Kepler Station from multiple angles. Vexani watched the human ships appear from nothing, twist space around the defense platforms, and vanish again. Gasps came from several representatives who had not seen the footage before. The ethereals made high-pitched sounds of distress. The Rockburn rumbled among themselves. As you can see, Moran continued, these human vessels demonstrate capabilities that challenge our understanding of physics itself. General Korath of the Draconian Empire stood up. His massive form cast a shadow across half the chamber. High Counselor, this is clearly an act of war. The humans have declared themselves enemies of the Council. We must respond with overwhelming force. And how do you propose to fight an enemy we cannot see? Asked Counselor Veltar of the Ethereals. Her voice was like music, but her words were sharp. Our weapons cannot touch their ships. We will find a way, Korath growled. We always have. Vexani stood up. If I may speak, High Counselor. Moran nodded toward her. The chamber recognizes Counselor Vexani of Centauri. Thank you. I have been studying these incidents carefully. The humans had opportunities to destroy our fleets completely. They chose not to. They disabled our defenses but harmed no one. This suggests their goals are political, not military. They are testing us, called out Representative Skal of the Serpent Worlds. Like a predator studying prey before the kill. Perhaps, Vexani acknowledged. But consider this, if they wanted to destroy us, why reveal their capabilities? At all? Why not strike from the shadows without warning? The chamber grew quiet. Vexani could see that her words were making some representatives think. What are you suggesting? Asked High Counselor Moran. That we try to understand what the humans want before we assume they are our enemies. General Korath made a disgusted sound. The humans want to challenge Council authority. They want to upset the order that has kept peace in the galaxy for 1,000 years. Has it kept peace? Asked a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Representative Ixara of the Vale Nebula colonies. Her species was young, only recently granted council membership. They were one of the smaller voices in the chamber. Explain yourself, demanded Moran. Ixara stood slowly. Her people were tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected light. High Counselor, the current order keeps peace between council members. But what about species outside the council? What about races that are told they cannot advance beyond certain technological levels? An uncomfortable murmur ran through the chamber. Several representatives shifted in their seats. The council maintains stability, General Korath said firmly. Some species are not ready for advanced technology. Ready according to whom? Ixara asked. Who decides which races can grow and which must remain primitive? Vexani felt a chill run down her spine. She had never heard anyone question the Council's policies so directly. But Ixara was raising points that many had whispered about in private. "This is not the time for such discussions," Morin said quickly. "We are here to address the human threat. But perhaps the two issues are connected," Vexani said carefully. "Perhaps the humans are responding to something we have not considered." High Counselor Morin's expression became stern. "Counselor Vexani, are you suggesting that the Council's actions justified this attack?" "I am suggesting that we try to understand the full situation before we make decisions that could lead to war." The chamber erupted in voices. Some representatives shouted agreement with Vexani. Others demanded immediate military action. The Draconians roared their anger while the Ethereals sang their concerns. Morin struck the ceremonial staff 3 times, calling for order. "We will hear from our intelligence services. Director Zeran, present your findings." A figure stepped into the center of the chamber. Director Zaran was a metamorph, one of the shape-shifting species that often worked in Council intelligence. His current form was tall and gray, with no distinctive features. "High Counselor, we have been investigating human technological development for the past several months. Our analysis shows that their advancement rate increased dramatically approximately 1 year ago." "What changed?" asked Counselor Veltar. "Unknown. Human deep space exploration expanded significantly. They established new research stations in their outer system, but we have been unable to determine what they found." Vexani leaned forward. "Director, have the humans made any diplomatic overtures? Any attempts to negotiate?" "None through official channels," Zaran replied. "However, we have detected increased communication between human representatives and several Council member species." General Korath stood up again. "Which species?" "I cannot reveal that information in open session," Zaran said diplomatically. But Vexani could see the answer in his body language. The director's eyes had glanced briefly toward several sections of the chamber. The younger races. The species that had joined the Council more recently. "High Counselor," Vexani said, "I request that we attempt diplomatic contact with the humans before taking any military action." "Seconded," called Representative Ixara. "Opposed," roared General Korath. "The humans have shown their true nature. They respond only to strength." The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued about response options, about technological capabilities, about the implications for galactic stability. But underneath all the discussion, Vexani sensed something else, fear, not just fear of human technology, but fear of change itself. The Council had maintained the same order for 1,000 years. The same rules, the same hierarchy, the same careful balance of power. Now the humans had shattered that balance in a single day. As the session dragged on, Vexani found herself thinking about her own people's history. The Centauri had once been explorers, pushing the boundaries of known space. But after joining the Council, they had become comfortable, safe, stagnant. What if the humans were right to challenge the system? "We will recess for the day," High Counselor Morin finally announced. "Tomorrow we will vote on our official response to the human actions." As representatives filed out of the chamber, Vexani lingered behind. The great room felt heavy with tension and unspoken fears. Rixel approached her. "Counselor, what do you think will happen?" Vexani looked up at the holographic display, still showing the human ships bending space around their enemies. Such power, such precision, such careful restraint. "I think," she said slowly, "that everything is about to change, whether we want it to or not." Outside the chamber windows, the lights of Nexus Prime sparkled against the darkness of space. Ships from dozens of worlds filled the orbital lanes, all of them wondering what would happen next. All of them afraid that the age of Council dominance was coming to an end. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, invisible human ships were watching, waiting, ready to reshape the galaxy forever. Captain Sarah Chun floated in the command center of the HMS Shadowbreak. Around her, the walls seemed to shift and breathe like living things. This was what happened when a ship existed between normal space and the dark matter realm. Reality became flexible. Status report, she called to her crew. All systems stable, Captain, replied Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. We are maintaining position in dark matter space, 200 kilometers from Kepler Station. Sarah nodded. From here, they could watch the Council ships without being detected. The Shadowbreak and her sister ships existed in a layer of reality that Council sensors could not reach. They were ghosts in space, invisible to everyone except each other. Any movement from the Council fleet? She asked. No change, Captain. Admiral Zethkar-S ships are holding position at minimum safe distance. They have not attempted to approach. The station again, Sarah felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that no one had been hurt. Sadness that it had come to this at all. 3 days ago, she had been a simple patrol captain in the Human Defense Force. Now she commanded one of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. Everything had changed when they found the artifact. Captain, called Chief Engineer Rodriguez from his station. Dark matter containment is at 92%. The crew compartments are stable, but I'm seeing some temporal fluctuations in Section 7. Sarah frowned. How bad? Minor, Captain. A few seconds of time dilation. Nothing dangerous yet. Yet that word always worried Sarah, the dark matter. Technology was powerful beyond imagination, but it came with a price. Extended time in this realm could cause problems for human minds and bodies. Time moved differently here. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower, sometimes in directions that had no names. Maintain current position, she ordered. But keep monitoring those fluctuations. Sarah activated her personal communicator and walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent walls, she could see normal space overlaid with the strange geometry of the dark matter realm. Stars appeared as spiraling threads of light. Planets looked like glowing bubbles floating in an ocean of purple energy. Admiral Vasquez, she spoke into the communicator. Yes, Captain Chun, came the reply. Admiral Elena Vasquez commanded the entire human dark matter fleet from her flagship, the HMS Transcendence. The Council fleet is maintaining distance. Number. Signs of immediate retaliation. Good. How is your crew holding up? Sarah looked around the observation deck. 2 of her crew members were there, staring out at the impossible view. Their faces showed the strain that all dark matter ship crews experienced. Living between dimensions was not natural for humans. They are managing, Admiral. But we cannot stay in dark matter space much longer without risking psychological effects. Understood. The demonstration phase is complete anyway. We have sent our message to the Council. Admiral, Sarah said carefully, was this really necessary? Attacking Council positions? There was a long pause before Vasquez replied. Captain, do you know what Project Pruning is? No, Admiral. Then you need to see the files we recovered from the artifact. Report to my ship in 1 hour. Bring your senior officers. The communication ended. Sarah stared out at the swirling patterns of dark matter space and wondered what she was about to learn. 1 hour later, Sarah and her senior staff materialized in the conference room of the HMS Transcendence. The transfer between dark matter. Ships always left her feeling dizzy. Moving through folded space was not something the human body was designed for. Admiral. Vasquez stood at the head of a large table. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. The stress of the past few months had aged her visibly. Thank you all for coming, Vasquez began. What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. It explains why we took action against the Council. The lights dimmed and a holographic display activated above the table. Sarah saw star charts, documents in alien languages, and what looked like surveillance footage of human colonies. 18 months ago, Vasquez continued, our deep space exploration ship Aurora discovered something in the Oort cloud of the Sol system, an artifact left by an ancient alien civilization. The display showed images of a crystalline structure floating in the darkness beyond Plateau. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Geometric patterns covered its surface, patterns That seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. The artifact contained information, Vasquez said. Technical specifications for dark matter manipulation. But it also contained a warning. New images appeared. Recordings of alien faces speaking in languages that predated all known civilizations. The beings who built this artifact called themselves the predecessors. They transcended physical existence millions of years ago. But before they left, they tried to guide younger species toward enlightenment. Lieutenant Torres raised his hand. Admiral, what does this have to do with the Council? Everything, Lieutenant. The predecessors left records of their observations. For the past 1,000 years, they watched the Council suppress technological development among younger species. Sarah felt cold suddenly. Suppress how? Any species that advanced too quickly was subjected to pacification. Their worlds were attacked. Their populations reduced, their technology destroyed. The attacks were made to look like natural disasters or internal conflicts. The display showed a list of species names. 12 different civilizations, all marked as extinct or primitive in current Council records. The Council has been maintaining galactic stability by preventing anyone from challenging their technological superiority, Vasquez explained. They have been doing this for centuries. Chief Engineer Rodriguez stared at the display. Are you saying the Council committed genocide? Multiple times. Whenever a species developed faster than the Council wanted, they were eliminated. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. And they planned to do this to humanity? Project Pruning, Vasquez said grimly. We found the complete files in the artifact's memory banks. The Council has been monitoring human development for 50 years. When our technology reached a certain threshold, they would manufacture a crisis. Make it look like humans were becoming aggressive or unstable. The display showed detailed plans. False flag operations, economic manipulation, even plans to stage attacks on Council worlds and blame them on human extremists. The final phase called for direct military intervention, Vasquez continued. A series of defensive strikes that would destroy Earth's industrial capacity and reduce humanity to a pre-space civilization. When? Asked Lieutenant Torres quietly. The operation was scheduled to begin 6 months from now. The Council wanted to wait until after the trade negotiations so they would look like the victims. Sarah felt sick. All those years of peaceful contact with the Council, all those treaties and trade agreements, it had all been preparation for humanity's destruction. The predecessors knew this would happen, Vasquez said. That's why they left the artifact where we would find it. They wanted to give us the tools to defend ourselves. But why us? Asked Rodriguez. Why not some other species? Because humans are different. Most species, when they reach a certain level of development, become comfortable. They stop exploring, stop questioning. They accept the status quo. Vasquez brought up new images. Human. Ships exploring the edges of known space. Human scientists pushing the boundaries of physics. Human colonies spreading to the most dangerous and remote worlds. Humans never stop pushing forward, she said, even when it would be safer to stay still. The predecessors saw this quality in us. They believed we could break the cycle. Sarah looked around the table at her officers. They all looked stunned by what they had learned. Everything they thought they knew about galactic politics had been turned upside down. Admiral, she said slowly, what exactly are we trying to accomplish? We are forcing the Council to acknowledge that their system of control is over. The attacks on their installations were demonstrations. We could have destroyed everything, but we chose to show restraint. To prove we are not the threat they claim we are. Exactly. We want them to know that we know about Project Pruning. We want them to understand that we have the power to defend ourselves, and we want them to negotiate. Lieutenant Torres leaned forward. Negotiate what? An end to technological suppression, free development for all species. A real democracy, instead of a hierarchy maintained by fear. Rodriguez shook his head. The Council will never agree to that. They have too much to lose. Some Council members will resist, Vasquez admitted, but others are tired of the old system. The younger species especially, they remember what it was like before they were civilized by the Council. Sarah studied the star charts still floating above the table. She thought about the Council fleet sitting outside Kepler Station, afraid to approach because they could not understand human technology. Admiral, how many ships do we have with dark matter capability? 47 operational vessels? More are being completed every month. And how many ships does the Council have? Approximately 50,000. The numbers were sobering. Even with their technological advantage, humans were vastly outnumbered. That is why we need allies, Vasquez said, reading Sarah's thoughts. Several Council species have already made discreet contact with us. They want change as much as we do. Which species? I cannot say here. But you will know soon enough. The next phase of our plan is about to begin. Vasquez deactivated the holographic display. The conference room returned to normal lighting. Captain Chen, your ship will remain on station at Kepler for another 48 hours. Then you will receive new orders. What kind of orders? We are going to attend a council meeting, all of us. In person? Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Admiral, that sounds extremely dangerous. It is, but it is also necessary. The council needs to see us face to face. They need to understand that we are not monsters hiding in the shadows. We are people who want the same things they claim to want: peace, prosperity, and progress. As the meeting ended and Sarah prepared to return to her ship, she thought about everything she had learned. The Council was not the benevolent organization it pretended to be. It was a system built on fear and control, maintained by the threat of violence. But humans had changed that. In finding the predecessor artifact, they had gained the power to challenge the Council's authority. The question now was whether they could use that power wisely. Back aboard the Shadowbreak, Sarah stood on the observation deck and watched the Council ships in the distance. Admiral Zefkar's fleet looked so small from here, so helpless. She thought about the predecessors, the ancient beings who had transcended physical existence. They had watched the galaxy for millions of years, waiting for someone to break the cycle of oppression. They had chosen humanity for that task. Sarah only hoped humans were worthy of their faith. Captain, called Lieutenant Torres from the bridge, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Vasquez. Put it through. All ships, prepare for Phase 2. We are going to Nexus Prime. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In a few days, the human fleet would emerge from dark matter space in the heart of Council territory. They would face the representatives of 47 species, many of whom wanted humanity destroyed. But they would also face the species who wanted change. The young races who remembered what freedom felt like. The allies who had been waiting for someone to challenge the Council's power. The galaxy was about to discover that the age of human isolation was over, and nothing would ever be the same again. Agent Crickstall moved through the shadows of the Council Intelligence headquarters. Her shape-shifting abilities allowed her to look like any species she chose. Today she wore the form of a maintenance worker, gray skin and 4 arms that were common among the service staff. No one paid attention to maintenance workers. They were invisible, moving through secure areas without question. It was the perfect disguise for what she needed to do. 3 days had passed since the Emergency Council session. 3 days since Director Zaran had given his briefing about human technological advancement. But Crickstall knew there was more to the story. Much more. She carried a cleaning cart down the corridor toward the restricted archives. Her real mission had nothing to do with cleaning. High Counselor Morin had personally assigned her to investigate how the humans had acquired their impossible technology. The archive entrance was guarded by 2 security officers. Crickstall approached them with her head down, acting like a nervous worker. I need to clean the archive chambers, she said in the simple speech patterns of a service worker. Daily maintenance schedule. One guard checked his datapad. You are early today. Supervisor says work faster. Big meeting tomorrow. Everything must be perfect. The guards looked at each other and shrugged. They had more important things to worry about than cleaning schedules. They opened the door and waved her. Through the council archives stretched for kilometers underground. Millions of files from 1,000 years of galactic history. Most of it was stored in quantum crystals that could hold entire libraries of information. Crystal found a terminal in a quiet section and connected her portable scanner. Her real identity codes gave her access to classified materials that regular investigators could never see. She started with human contact records. The Council had been monitoring humanity for over 50 years, watching their technological development. The files showed steady progress in space travel, computing, and energy production. Nothing unusual. Then she found something strange. 18 months ago, human deep space activity had increased dramatically. Ships were sent to the outer edges of their solar system. Research stations were built in places where no human had ever gone before, but the official report said nothing about what they found out there. Crystal dug deeper. She found budget allocations for deep space archaeology and xenological research. Large amounts of funding had been redirected to projects with no clear purpose. Someone had been keeping secrets. She accessed the classified surveillance files. These were recordings from Council spy networks inside human space. What she found made her 3 hearts beat faster. The humans had discovered something in their outer system. Something that changed everything, the surveillance footage showed. Human ships approaching a crystalline structure floating beyond their outermost planet. The artifact was massive, clearly artificial, and definitely not human in origin. By the ancient void, Crystal whispered to herself. She watched as human scientists studied the artifact. Their excitement was obvious even through the grainy surveillance footage. They had found something incredible, but that was not the most disturbing part. Crystal found another file, buried deep in the classified archives. A file that made her blood run cold. Project Pruning. She opened the file with shaking hands, page after page of detailed plans. Target analysis, resource allocation, timeline projections. It was all there. The Council had been planning to destroy human civilization. The operation was scheduled to begin in 6 months. False flag attacks would make humans look aggressive. Council member worlds would stage incidents and blame human extremists. The media would turn public opinion against humanity. Then would come the military strikes. Surgical attacks on Earth's major cities. Destruction of orbital facilities. Reduction of human population to pre-industrial levels. The files even included plans for after the attack. Humans would be relocated to primitive agricultural colonies. Their technology would be destroyed. Their history would be rewritten to show them as a dangerous species that had threatened galactic peace. Crystal felt sick. This was not the Council she had served for 20 years. This was something much darker. She kept reading. The Project Pruning files went back decades. Lists of other species that had been pacified using similar methods. 12 different civilizations, all destroyed when they became too advanced. The Kethmori, the Zolthek, the Bright Singers. All extinct now, their worlds listed as uninhabitable in current Council records, but the truth was in these files. They had been murdered. What are you doing here? Crystal spun around. Director Zarin stood behind her, his metamorph features set in a stern expression. She had been so focused on the files that she had not heard him approach. Director, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, I am investigating the human situation as ordered in the restricted archives. These files are beyond your clearance level. Crystal looked at the screen showing Project Pruning details. There was no point in hiding what she had found. Director, do you know about this? Zarin moved closer and looked at the screen. His expression did not change. Close the file, Agent. Director, this is evidence of genocide, multiple genocides. The Council has been systematically destroying younger species for centuries. I said close the file. Crystal stared at him. You knew. You have known all along? Zarin's form shifted slightly, showing his stress. Agent Crystal, you are young. You do not understand the complexities of maintaining galactic stability. Stability? Crystal's voice rose. You call mass murder Stability? I call it necessary. Do you know what happens when species advance too quickly? They become dangerous. They develop weapons that can destroy entire star systems. They start wars that consume whole sectors. So the Council decided to become judge and executioner? The Council decided to prevent galactic wars by maintaining technological balance. Yes, some species have been sacrificed, but billions of lives have been saved. Krikstal backed away from him. The humans found out, didn't they? That's why they attacked our installations. They discovered Project Pruning. We believe so, yes. How? Zarin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. The artifact they found, it was not natural. Someone left it there deliberately. Who? We are not certain. But we have theories. Krikstal's mind raced. The predecessors. The ancient species mentioned in the old legends. Zarin nodded slowly. Beings who transcended physical existence millions of years ago. They have been watching the galaxy, waiting for someone to challenge the Council's system, and they chose humanity. It appears so. The artifact contained complete technical specifications for dark matter manipulation, but it also contained our classified files. Everything about Project Pruning and the other pacification operations. Krikstal sat down heavily in a chair. The scope of what she had learned was overwhelming. The Council was not the benevolent organization she had believed. It was an empire built on fear and murder. Director, what happens now? Now we prepare for war. The humans have the technology to destroy us. They know our secrets. They will not stop until the current system is overthrown. Maybe that would be a good thing. Zarin stared at her. Agent, that is close to treason. Is it treason to want an end to genocide? It is treason to want the destruction of galactic civilization. Without the Council's guidance, the galaxy would tear itself apart in wars. Millions of species would develop planet-killing weapons. Entire sectors would become uninhabitable. Krikstal looked back at the screen showing Project Pruning. And how many species has the Council already made uninhabitable? 12 species sacrificed to save thousands. It was necessary. Was it? Or was it just easier than finding another way? Zarin's expression hardened. Agent Krikstal, you will forget what you have seen here. You will continue your investigation into human technology, but you will not discuss Project Pruning with anyone. Director, that is an order. Krikstal stood up slowly. She looked around the archives, filled with the secrets of 1,000 years of Council rule. How many other dark truths were hidden in these files? I understand, Director, but she did not mean it. After Zarin left, Krikstal sat alone in the archives. She thought about her people, the Metamorphs. They had joined the Council 200 years ago, grateful for the protection and stability it offered. Had they been next on the list for pacification? If they had advanced too quickly, would Project Pruning have been activated against them too? She looked at the terminal again. The Project Pruning files were still open, showing the detailed plans for humanity's destruction. 6 months from now, Earth would have been a burning ruin. Billions of humans would have been dead. But the humans had found out in time. They had acquired the technology to defend themselves. They had struck first to prevent their own extinction. Krikstal began copying files to her personal storage device. Evidence of every pacification operation. Proof of the Council's crimes. Documentation that could change everything. She did not know what she would do with the information yet. But she knew she could not let it remain hidden. As she worked, she thought about the humans floating invisibly around Kepler Station. They had the power to destroy the Council fleet whenever they chose, but they had shown restraint. They had avoided casualties. Perhaps they truly were different from the species the Council had destroyed. Perhaps they could build something better. The copying finished. Krikstal closed the files and prepared to leave the archives. She had what she came for, and much more than she had expected. But as she walked toward the exit, she heard voices in the corridor. Director Zarin was talking to someone. Confirmed that she accessed the restricted files. Project Pruning, pacification records, everything. How much does she know? The second voice belonged to High Counselor Moran. Everything. She has seen the complete records. That is unfortunate. Agent Crystal has always been one of our most loyal operatives. What are your orders, High Counselor? There was a long pause. Crystal pressed herself against the wall, using her shape-shifting abilities to blend with the shadows. The knowledge she has gained makes her a security risk. Arrange an accident. Understood. Crystal felt ice in her veins. They were going to kill her, just like they had killed 12 entire species. She waited until the voices faded away, then carefully made her way to a different exit. She could not return to her quarters or her office. They would be watching for her there. Instead, she headed for the transport bays. She needed to get off Nexus Prime, and she needed to do it without being detected. As she walked through the corridors of the intelligence headquarters, Crystal thought about everything she had learned. The Council was not just planning to destroy humanity. They were planning to cover up their own crimes by eliminating anyone who knew the truth. But they had made one mistake. They had underestimated both the humans and their own agents. Crystal had evidence that could expose the Council's dark history. Evidence that could turn public opinion against the leadership. Evidence that could help the humans build a coalition of species tired of living under the Council's oppressive system. She just had to stay alive long enough to use it. Behind her, in the archives, alarms began to sound. They had discovered that the files had been copied. Crystal smiled grimly and began to run. The hunt was beginning. But this time she was not the hunter. She was the prey who might just save the galaxy. The space around Nexus Prime had never seen anything like it. 47 human dark matter warships materialized from nothing, appearing in perfect formation around the Council capital world. Their hulls gleamed with purple energy as they existed. Partially in normal space and partially in the dark matter realm, on the bridge of the HMS Transcendence, Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the Council fleet scramble to respond. Thousands of ships moved into defensive positions, but everyone knew it was pointless. The humans had already proven that Council weapons could not touch them. "Admiral," called her communications officer, "we are receiving signals from the planetary surface. High Counselor Moran wants to speak with you. Put him through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the ancient leader of the Galactic Council. His expression was a mixture of fear and anger. "Human Admiral," Moran said carefully, "you have violated Council space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vasquez smiled calmly. "High Counselor, we are here to talk. We have information that the Council needs to hear." "The Council does not negotiate with terrorists." "Terrorists?" Vasquez raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you call people who defend themselves against genocide?" Moran's expression shifted slightly. "I do not know what you mean." "Project Pruning. The systematic extermination of 12 species over the past 1,000 years. Your plan to destroy humanity in 6 months." The silence on the channel stretched for long moments. Finally, Moran spoke again. "Those operations were necessary for galactic stability. Necessary for Council power, you mean?" Before Moran could reply, another voice interrupted the transmission. "High Counselor, this is Agent Crystal of Council Intelligence. I have evidence that the human admiral speaks the truth." On the screen, a figure appeared beside Moran. The metamorph agent looked tired but determined. She held a data storage device in her hand. "Agent Crystal," Moran said angrily, "you were ordered to report to security." "I was ordered to die." "Quietly," Crystal replied. "Instead, I chose to expose the truth." She activated the device. Holographic displays appeared around the Council chamber, visible to all the representatives. Documents, surveillance footage, and classified files filled the air. "Project Pruning," Crystal announced. 12 species murdered by the Council. The Kethmori wiped out when they developed faster-than-light communication. The Zolthek destroyed when they created artificial intelligence. The Bright Singers eliminated when they began exploring other dimensions. Gasps and cries of shock came from the Council chamber. Many representatives had never known about the pacification operations. They watched in horror as the evidence of genocide filled the air around them. "This is classified information," Moran shouted. "These operations were approved by the Inner Council for the good of all species." "Approved by a handful of ancient races who wanted to maintain their power?" Crystal shot back. "The younger species never had a voice in these decisions." Admiral Vasquez watched the chaos in the council chamber with satisfaction. The truth was finally coming out. But she knew this was only the beginning. "High Counselor," she said, cutting through the noise, "we propose a meeting, face-to-face, on neutral ground." "Absolutely not," General Korath's voice boomed from somewhere in the chamber. "We will not negotiate with murderers." "Murderers?" Captain Sarah Chun's voice came over the communication channel. She was speaking from the HMS Shadowbreak, positioned directly above the council building. "General, how many people did we kill at Kepler Station?" "That is not the point. 0, Chun continued. "We disabled your defenses without harming anyone. We could have destroyed your entire fleet, but we chose not to. Compare that to the billions of lives your council has taken." Representative Ixara of the Vale Nebula colonies stood up in the chamber. "High Counselor, I demand a full investigation of these allegations." "Seconded," called Counselor Vexani of the Centauri. "The young races demand answers," added another voice. Moran looked around the chamber as more and more representatives voiced their support for the humans. The unity of the council was cracking. "Very well," he said finally. "We will meet, but not on your terms." "What do you propose?" asked Vasquez. "Neutral space. The abandoned way station 7, both sides bring minimal escort. We discussed this matter. Like civilized beings, Vasquez considered the offer. Way Station 7 was an old trading post in the space between Council and human territory. It had been abandoned for decades but was still functional. "Agreed, but we bring our own security, as will we." The transmission ended. Admiral Vasquez turned to her senior staff. "Prepare a delegation. I want our best diplomatic minds and our strongest security team." "Admiral," said Captain Chun over the intercom, "this could be a trap." "It could be. But it is also an opportunity. The council is divided now. Some of them want the truth to come out." 3 days later, Way Station 7 came alive for the first time in 50 years. Ships from both sides arrived in the abandoned station's docking bays. The humans brought 3 vessels, including Admiral Vasquez's flagship. The council sent a dozen ships, representing different species. The meeting took place in the station's main conference room. It was a circular chamber with viewing ports that looked out into deep space. Representatives sat around a large table. Humans on one side, council members on the other. Admiral Vasquez led the human delegation. Beside her sat Captain Chun, Chief Scientist Dr. Martinez, and Agent Crystal, who had formally requested asylum with the human fleet. The council delegation was led by High Counselor Moran. General Korath sat beside him, along with Counselor Vexani and several other representatives. "Let us begin," Moran said formally. "Humans, you stand accused of unprovoked attacks on council installations." "We stand accused by the species that planned our extinction," Dr. Martinez replied calmly. She activated a holographic display showing the predecessor artifact. This device was left for us to find. It contained not only the technology to defend ourselves, but also evidence of your crimes. "The predecessors," whispered Counselor Vexani. "They were real, very real," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "They transcended physical existence millions of years ago. But they have been watching the galaxy, waiting for someone to break the cycle of oppression." General Korath slammed his fist on the table. "Oppression? The Council has maintained peace for 1,000 years. Peace built on fear," Agent Crystal said quietly. "Peace maintained by murder." She activated her own display, showing the complete Project Pruning files. Council representatives who had not seen the evidence before stared in shock at the detailed plans for humanity's destruction. 6 months, Admiral Vasquez said into the silence. That was how long we had left. 6 months before you would have staged false flag attacks and blamed them on human extremists. 6 months before your fleets arrived to pacify our worlds. Representative. Ixara stood up, her silver skin shimmering with emotion. High Counselor, is this true? Were you planning to destroy an entire species? Moran looked around the table at the faces staring at him. Some showed anger, others fear, a few showed disgust. The human species was developing too quickly, he said defensively. Their aggressive expansion and rapid technological advancement posed a threat to galactic stability. Whose definition of stability? Demanded Counselor Vexani. The Council's definition. The definition that has prevented galactic wars for a millennium. By preventing progress, Captain Chun said. By keeping younger species weak and dependent. By maintaining order. The argument might have continued forever, but it was interrupted by an unexpected voice. High Counselor Moran, everyone turned toward the viewing ports. Outside in space, a figure was floating without any protection. It appeared to be made of pure energy, constantly shifting between different forms. Predecessor, Dr. Martinez breathed. The energy being spoke without sound, its words appearing directly in everyone's minds. The time of the Council's dominion is ending. Humanity has broken the cycle. Others will follow. Moran stood up, his face pale. You have no right to interfere in galactic politics. We have every right to guide our children toward enlightenment. The Council has become what it once fought against, a tyranny that suppresses growth in the name of stability. General Korath reached for his weapon, but the energy being continued without concern. The choice is before you now. Evolve or be left behind. The galaxy will move forward with or without the Council. The predecessor began to fade. Its final words echoed in every mind present. The humans have shown you another path. The question is whether you have the wisdom to take it. Silence filled the conference room after the being vanished. Outside, stars wheeled slowly in the darkness, unchanged by the momentous events happening. On the tiny station. Finally, Counselor Vexani spoke. High Counselor, the old system is broken. We cannot continue the way we have been. The young races will rebel, added Representative Ixara. Now that they know the truth, they will never accept Council authority again. Moran looked around the table. He could see the truth in their faces. The unity of the Council was shattered. Some species would fight to maintain the old order, but others were ready for change. What do you propose? He asked quietly. Admiral Vasquez leaned forward. A new system, true democracy instead of oligarchy. Free technological development for all species. And an end to the suppression policies. In exchange for what? Humanity shares the dark matter technology for peaceful purposes only. We help establish monitoring systems to prevent misuse. We work together to build something better than what existed before. General Korath stood up angrily. This is surrender. The Council will never accept these terms. Some will not, Vexani said calmly. But the younger races will. And without their support, the old system cannot survive anyway. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Not all Council species accepted the new arrangement. The Draconians and several other older races refused to give up their power. They withdrew from the discussions and began preparing for war, but 41 species agreed to the new galactic charter. They established the Federation of Free Worlds with representatives chosen by election rather than appointment. Technological development would be monitored but not suppressed. Species could advance at their own pace without fear of pacification. Humanity became the first species to formally share advanced technology with other races. Dark matter research facilities were established on neutral worlds, staffed by scientists from multiple species. Agent Crystal became the first non-human to serve aboard a human dark matter vessel. Her assignment was to help establish the monitoring protocols that would prevent the technology from being misused. As the meetings concluded, Captain Chun stood on the observation deck of Way Station 7, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and Council ships. Former enemies were working together to build something new. Captain, Agent Crystal approached her. Do you think this will work? I do not know, Chun replied honestly. But it is better than the alternative. Which was? War, Destruction, the cycle of violence continuing forever. Crystal nodded. The predecessors chose well when they gave you their gift. They did not give us power, Chun said thoughtfully. They gave us responsibility. The responsibility to break the cycle and build something better. And if the Draconians attack? Then we will defend the new system the same way we defended ourselves. But I hope it will not come to that. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to change. Young species that had been suppressed for centuries suddenly found themselves free to explore and advance. New technologies emerged from unexpected sources. Trade routes opened between species that had never been allowed to interact directly. There were conflicts, of course. The Draconian Empire and its allies tried to maintain the old order by force, but they found themselves increasingly isolated as more species joined the Federation. The humans kept their word. Dark matter technology was shared carefully with safeguards to prevent its use as a weapon. Research stations were established throughout Federation space, staffed by scientists from dozens of worlds, and in the deep spaces between stars, invisible to all sensors, human ships continued their patrol. Guardian angels watching over the fragile new democracy, ready to defend it against those who would restore the old tyranny. The age of council dominance was over. The age of the Federation had begun. And humanity, the species once marked for extinction, had become the guardians of galactic freedom. The predecessors had chosen well indeed.